Open the cabinet where you keep your supplements right now. Not tomorrow morning when you take them, not the next time you happen to think about it. Right now, before another sentence reaches you, go to wherever those bottles live and look at them. The green tea extract, the turmeric capsules, the vitamin A, the niacin, the bottles you chose deliberately, that you researched, that you possibly spent real money on because everything you read told you they were protective, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, essential, everything that word implies about something your body needs rather than something your body must defend itself against. What you're about to understand is that several of the supplements sitting in that cabinet right now, taken in the doses printed on their own labels, taken by millions of adults over 65, who believe they are investing in their long-term health, are producing a slow, silent, measurable form of liver injury that produces no pain, no jaundice, no dramatic symptom in its early stages. And that is advancing right now in a population that has never been told clearly enough, directly enough, and specifically enough that the supplement aisle operates under a regulatory framework that does not require a single safety study before a product reaches the shelf. There are 6 specific supplements that hepatologists, liver specialists, identify consistently as the most dangerous for adults over 65, not because they are exotic or obscure, but precisely because they are common, widely trusted, heavily marketed, and taken daily by people who have no idea that the organ silently processing every capsule they swallow is accumulating damage that blood tests ordered at routine physicals frequently fail to detect until the injury has been progressing for months. Understanding why the liver after 65 is categorically more vulnerable to supplement-induced injury than the liver at 40 requires a physiological foundation that most adults are never given, and without it, the specific dangers that follow will not carry the weight they deserve. The liver is the body's primary site of metabolic processing, the organ through which virtually every substance entering the bloodstream, whether food, medication, or supplement, passes for chemical transformation before it circulates further. That processing is performed by hepatocytes, the liver's primary functional cells, using enzyme systems, most critically the cytochrome P450 enzyme family, that break complex molecules into forms the body can use or excrete. After 65, hepatic blood flow decreases by a documented and measurable percentage compared with younger adults, meaning the liver receives less circulation to support its metabolic activity. The cytochrome P450 enzyme systems reduce in efficiency, slowing the rate at which compounds are processed and increasing the duration of time those compounds and their intermediate breakdown products spend in contact with liver tissue. Hepatocyte regeneration, the liver's extraordinary capacity to repair damaged tissue, slows. The liver's glutathione reserves, the primary antioxidant buffer protecting hepatocytes from the oxidative stress generated during metabolism, are demonstrably lower in older adults than in younger ones. Dr. Paul Watkins, professor of pharmacy at the University of North Carolina and director of the Institute for Drug Safety Sciences, whose research on drug-induced and supplement-induced liver injury has been published in Hepatology, Gastroenterology, and the Journal of Clinical Pharmacology, has written that the aging liver exists in a state of compressed metabolic reserve, processing the same molecular load it always has, but with less blood flow, slower enzyme activity, reduced regenerative capacity, and thinner antioxidant defenses. A supplement that a 50-year-old liver processes efficiently and eliminates without incident may, in a 65-year-old liver, produce INT, or mediate metabolites, that remain in hepatic tissue long enough and at concentrations high enough to trigger the inflammatory cascade that defines drug-induced and supplement-induced liver injury. This is not a theoretical risk. The Drug-Induced Liver Injury Network, a research consortium funded by the National Institutes of Health and spanning multiple major academic medical centers across the United States, has documented that herbal and dietary supplement hepatotoxicity now accounts for a substantial and growing proportion of all liver injury cases in the United States, and that the average age of affected patients skews older with each annual report. 6 supplements account for a disproportionate share of that injury, and each one is almost certainly familiar to you. The first supplement on this list is one that the 65-plus population began taking in enormous numbers because every headline attached to it promised the opposite of what it can quietly deliver at concentrated doses. Green tea extract, sold in capsule form under dozens of brand names and marketed for antioxidant benefits, metabolic support, weight management, and cognitive health, contains concentrated epigallocatechin gallate, the compound abbreviated EGCG, at levels that can exceed the EGCG content of 20 or more cups of brewed green tea in a single capsule. Brewed green tea, consumed in normal dietary quantities, has a safety record that spans centuries and a genuine body of research supporting its health benefits. Concentrated green tea extract in capsule form is a pharmacologically different entity, and the distinction is one that the supplement's marketing has worked systematically to obscure. The United States Pharmacopeia, which sets quality standards for supplements and medications in the United States, published a safety review documenting dozens of cases of clinically confirmed hepatotoxicity associated with green tea extract consumption, including cases requiring hospitalization and, in a small number of documented instances, liver failure requiring transplantation. The mechanism involves EGCG's pro-oxidant activity at high concentrations, a reversal of its antioxidant role when the concentration exceeds the liver's buffering capacity, generating oxidative stress in hepatocytes that triggers an inflammatory injury pattern classified as hepatocellular damage in biopsy findings. Research published in Hepatology Communications found that the injury occurs in a genetically susceptible subset of individuals and frequently resolves upon discontinuation, but that the window between onset of injury and detection is consistently measured in months rather than days. If green tea extract is in your supplement cabinet because of its reputation as an antioxidant, the compound delivering that reputation is producing the opposite effect in your liver at the concentration your capsule contains. The second supplement has been adopted into the daily routines of the 65-plus population at a rate that has made it one of the top-selling supplements in American pharmacies and grocery stores, driven by a decade of headlines about inflammation, joint pain, and cognitive protection that are not false, but that omit a documented hepatic complication with a growing case file. Turmeric and its active compound curcumin have been the subject of genuine and extensive research. Curcumin has real anti-inflammatory properties, real antioxidant activity, and a legitimate body of preliminary evidence across multiple disease areas. None of that research was conducted at the doses delivered by concentrated curcumin supplements, which routinely provide curcumin in quantities 500 to 2,000 times the amount present in dietary turmeric as a cooking spice. The Drug-Induced Liver Injury Network has documented a rising number of hepatotoxicity cases attributed to curcumin and turmeric supplements, and a case series published in the American Journal of Medicine described patients presenting with acute liver injury, elevated liver enzymes, symptomatic fatigue, and right upper quadrant discomfort, and in several cases jaundice, following turmeric supplement use at doses consistent with standard commercial labeling. The cases shared a common feature that makes this supplement particularly dangerous. Because turmeric is a food ingredient, patients and their initial treating physicians almost never considered it as a hepatotoxic agent when symptoms arose. The supplement was continued through the early phase of injury because no one identified it as the cause. If you take turmeric or curcumin capsules daily because of their anti-inflammatory reputation, the hepatic cost of that supplementation has never appeared in the marketing that reached you, and it should have. The third supplement on this list is one that most people over 65 believe they understand entirely because they have taken it for decades and because it is a vitamin, a word that carries an almost unconditional presumption of safety that the biochemistry of this particular compound, at doses widely sold and widely taken, does not support. High-dose vitamin A. Retinol, the preformed animal-derived version of vitamin A found in many multivitamins targeted at older adults and in standalone supplements, is one of the most extensively documented causes of chronic hepatotoxicity in the medical literature, producing a specific injury pattern called hepatic stellate cell activation that drives fibrosis, the development of scar tissue in the liver in a dose-dependent, cumulative process that builds across years rather than appearing acutely. The tolerable upper intake level for vitamin A established by the National Institutes of Health Office of Dietary Supplements is 3,000 micrograms per day for adults, a level that is reached or exceeded by the combination of a high-dose vitamin A supplement and a fortified multivitamin taken simultaneously, which is a pattern common among supplement-committed older adults. Research published in the Journal of Hepatology has documented hepatic fibrosis and cirrhosis attributed to vitamin A toxicity in patients whose daily intake, while exceeding recommendations, was within ranges they understood as moderate. After 65, the liver's capacity to safely store and clear retinol declines, meaning that an intake level that a younger liver managed without significant accumulation can produce progressive hepatic vitamin A loading in an older adult. If you take a vitamin A supplement separately from your multivitamin, or if your multivitamin provides vitamin A as retinol rather than as beta-carotene, the cumulative daily dose you are receiving deserves immediate calculation and review. The fourth supplement carries the most dramatic documented risk profile of any compound on this list and is simultaneously one of the fastest-growing supplements in American pharmacies. Driven by an anxious, sleep-deprived, stress-saturated older adult population that reach for something marketed as natural without knowing that natural, in this context, does not mean safe. Kava, a root extract derived from the Piper methysticum plant, consumed traditionally in Pacific Island cultures as a ceremonial beverage and now sold in the United States in concentrated capsule and liquid extract form for anxiety relief and sleep support, has produced documented hepatotoxicity severe enough that Germany, Switzerland, Canada, and the United Kingdom issued formal regulatory restrictions or market withdrawals of kava products following case reports of liver failure and transplantation. The United States Food and Drug Administration issued a consumer advisory warning about kava and potential liver damage, noting documented cases of hepatitis, cirrhosis, and liver failure in patients using commercial kava products at labeled doses, not at extreme overdose levels. Research published in Phytomedicine identified the mechanism as involving kava's active compounds, the kavalactones, inhibiting cytochrome P450 enzyme activity in a way that disrupts the liver's normal metabolic processing of both kava itself and other compounds being processed concurrently, creating a toxicity compounding effect that is dramatically worsened when kava is taken alongside prescription medications, which is the precise situation in which the majority of adults over 65 are using it. If kava is in your supplement cabinet as a sleep aid or anxiety support, you are taking a compound that multiple international regulatory bodies have found sufficiently dangerous to restrict commercially, and that information has not reached you through the product's labeling. The fifth supplement damages the liver through a mechanism so precisely dose-dependent and so clearly documented in the medical literature that its hepatotoxic potential at the doses sold over the counter should be considered pharmacological fact rather than theoretical risk. High-dose niacin, vitamin B3 in its nicotinic acid form, sold under brand names including Niaspan, and in generic extended-release and immediate-release formulations, prescribed and also available over the counter at doses of 1 to 3 grams per day for cholesterol management, produces a well-characterized hepatotoxicity pattern at sustained high doses that the AIM-HIGH trial, a large randomized controlled trial of niacin therapy funded by the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, documented with sufficient consistency that the trial's cardiovascular benefit arm was discontinued early. Research published in the Annals of Internal Medicine documented cases of niacin-induced hepatitis, including fulminant liver failure requiring transplantation, associated specifically with the extended-release formulation at doses adults purchased and self-administered based on general cardiovascular health information without physician supervision. The transition from immediate release to extended release niacin, a switch many adults make independently seeking to reduce the skin flushing associated with immediate release forms, has been specifically identified in hepatology literature as a risk escalation event, because the extended-release formulation produces higher sustained hepatic concentrations of niacin metabolites than the immediate-release form at equivalent doses. If you are taking niacin at doses above 500 milligrams daily for cholesterol or cardiovascular health, whether prescribed or self-initiated, the hepatic monitoring that clinical guidelines recommend at this dose level is a mandatory component of that treatment, not an optional follow-up. The sixth supplement is the newest major entry into the documented hepatotoxicity literature, and the one whose injury cases have grown most rapidly over the past 5 years, driven by an explosion in popularity that outpaced the safety evidence by years, and that has now reached a size of case documentation sufficient to prompt formal safety communications from multiple national health authorities. Ashwagandha, the adaptogen root extract sold under its Sanskrit botanical name and under numerous commercial brand names for stress reduction, cortisol management, immune support, and athletic recovery, has been the subject of a rapidly growing number of case reports and case series documenting liver injury in consumers using commercial ashwagandha products at labeled doses. A case series published in the Journal of Clinical and Translational Hepatology described multiple patients presenting with clinically significant liver enzyme elevations, jaundice, and symptomatic hepatitis attributable to ashwagandha supplementation, with resolution following discontinuation in most cases, but with severe outcomes in a subset. The World Health Organization's Uppsala Monitoring Center, which tracks international pharmacovigilance data, has documented a rising signal for ashwagandha-associated liver injury in its global safety database. The injury mechanism is not yet fully characterized, which is itself a statement about the maturity of the safety evidence relative to the scale of commercial adoption, and the absence of a clear mechanistic explanation has contributed to a regulatory and marketing environment in which the compound continues to be described as an adaptogen with an established safety record that the hepatology literature does not currently support for concentrated commercial formulations at sustained use in older adults. If you take ashwagandha because of its stress and cortisol narrative, a narrative that has been marketed with particular effectiveness to the older adult population dealing with the physiological and psychological stressors of aging, the liver injury documentation that has accumulated since that narrative reached you represents information that should be part of your supplementation decision. There is a dimension of this picture that applies specifically to the large proportion of adults over 65 who take daily prescription medications alongside these supplements, and it involves an interaction problem that most prescribing physicians are not aware of because patients consistently fail to disclose supplement use at medical appointments, operating under the assumption that natural products do not belong on a medication list. They do. Green tea extract, turmeric, kava, and ashwagandha all inhibit or induce cytochrome P450 enzyme activity in the liver, the same enzyme systems that metabolize warfarin prescribed as Coumadin. Statins including atorvastatin sold as Lipitor, and rosuvastatin sold as Crestor, certain antidepressants, and immunosuppressants including tacrolimus prescribed for organ transplant recipients. When a supplement inhibits the enzyme that processes a prescription medication, plasma concentrations of that medication rise above the therapeutic target, sometimes into toxic range, without any change in the prescribed dose. When a supplement induces the enzyme, plasma concentrations fall below therapeutic levels, producing treatment failure that the prescribing physician has no mechanism to detect unless they know the supplement is present. A study published in the British Journal of Clinical Pharmacology documented that fewer than 40% of adults using herbal supplements disclosed that use to their prescribing physicians. If you take any prescription medication and any of the 6 supplements named here, your physician has most likely been managing your pharmacological treatment without access to information that fundamentally changes the metabolic environment in which your medications are operating, and correcting that gap begins at your next appointment, not at some future point when it feels less awkward to mention. Here's the protocol: specific, actionable, sequenced, because information without a procedure attached to it produces anxiety rather than change. Begin with your supplement cabinet today. Remove every bottle and read the active ingredient and dose for each one. If you take green tea extract in any capsule or concentrated form, set it aside for physician review before your next dose. If you take turmeric or curcumin in capsule form, at doses above what you would consume by adding the spice to food, do the same. If your vitamin A supplement or multivitamin provides retinol, not beta-carotene, but retinol, calculate the combined daily dose from all sources and bring that total to your physician. If you have kava in any form for sleep or anxiety, discontinue it and contact your physician to discuss evidence-based alternatives this week. If you take niacin at doses above 500 milligrams and you have not had liver function tests within the past 6 months, call your physician's office and request AST, ALT, and total bilirubin testing, the 3 markers that constitute the minimum monitoring standard for high dose niacin use. If you take ashwagandha, bring the product's full ingredient panel to your physician and request that the hepatotoxicity signal now documented in the international pharmacovigilance literature be reviewed in the context of your personal hepatic health history. Write down every supplement you take, including dose and frequency, and bring that list to every medical appointment, attaching it to your medication list rather than keeping it separate, because the clinical distinction between a supplement and a medication is regulatory, not physiological. Your liver processes both with equal biochemical commitment and equal vulnerability. The organ doing that processing after 65 deserves the same scrutiny applied to every pharmaceutical in your cabinet, not because supplements are universally dangerous, but because the 6 documented here are dangerous in specific, measurable ways that the industry responsible for selling them has never been required to tell you. You have been told now. The next decision belongs entirely to you.